Hello, quilt people. How are ya? Anyhow, well, look at this. My shirt actually matches the quilt. I did not plan that, but here we are. I had a letter from a woman a while back. I believe her name was Linda. And she'd been quilting for a long time. She was like, how is it that my blocks never really truly match up? Like, they're always just a little bit off one way or the other. And she was super frustrated that she couldn't seem to get that figured out. So today I wanted to talk about... Today I wanted to talk about items that will make your piecing more accurate and why sometimes that might be happening for you and how to fix that. So the first thing you want to do is really pay attention to your 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm surprised at how many people don't really recognize the importance of getting the exact precise seam allowance each and every time. Because even if you're just a little bit off by a couple of threads, well, that over, let's say even 4, 6, 8 times in a block is really going to mess you up. And then your pieced work will be off and all kinds of crazy things. So the first thing, if I can find it, damn it, where did I put it? Okay, so for your 1/4 inch seam allowance, you have to get a proper foot. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, but like if you're not doing exact 1/4 inch that's being guided, right? Guided by something like this, and you're just kind of guessing on your machine, and see this little piece right here, I don't know if you can see it, right? That keeps my 1/4 inch seam allowance perfect and exact, right? Because it has this little guide and it tells me all the time where my 1/4 inch is, and it feeds it through and doesn't allow, because there's this little bar that's right here that won't allow it to go beyond the metal, right? So it really makes sure that each and every time that it is exactly 1/4 inch. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly 1/4 inch, but it does have to be exact each and every time. Like, that's where you're getting off, is that your seam allowance is not exactly the same. If it was a little bit, wider or thinner, so long as that was carried out through the entire work, you'd be okay. That's why when you switch machines midway through piecing a project, it throws you off. I don't know if you noticed that or not. It's because even just the tiniest bit will make your pieced work not exact, and that's where things start to go askew. So, first thing is, I'm telling you, you have to get a foot like this that precisely measures 1/4 inch and doesn't allow, if you just have a foot with lines on it and you're kind of guessing each and every time, oh, this looks like 1/4 inch. No, 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 no. That is very bad. That, I mean, because it's not being guided and you're eyeballing it. And so that is your first problem, right? The right tool for the right job. Here we go. Is this. You got to do it, okay? So that's the first thing, 1/4 inch seam allowance. The next thing is probably your pressing. I am shocked at how many people get this wrong. You have to press things perfectly, and I have a different tutorial on pressing. So if you have any questions about that, don't watch this video, watch the other one, right? It was just posted a few weeks ago, but pressing will make or break your project. And again, oh my goodness, like so many times I see students not truly understand the purpose of pressing, okay? And so you have to really pay attention to that. So the next part is pinning, all right? So 1/4 inch seam allowances are gonna be your first deal. Second is pressing, right? And please, I mean, really pay attention in getting those seams fully open, right? Even if you just do like it not perfect on one and not the other, it's gonna throw you off. I can't stress enough how important that is, that you each and every time press correctly and press the same way so that everything turns out being the same dimensions. All right, next, pinning. So I'm working on this block this is the Stetson Cross, right? So I've done it in one moment. So the original Stetson Cross was this one, which I quite like, right? You've probably seen that in a lot of my marking materials. This one, right, in the black and gray. Ooh, pretty, right? So there's that one. And then I made this red one for the video tutorial, because yes, all my patterns come with a video tutorial, so you can watch me do it step by step and you can follow along to ensure your success, because you are awesome. And then I'm doing this blue one now. Woo! Very nice. So let me show you how I approach pinning, because again, oh my gosh, like every time you have an intersection of any two fabrics or any two like blocks or any, you have to pin this. You can't just put it through the machine and hope for the best. I mean, people are often like, oh, your points are really good. And I'm like, yeah, well, I have just pinned that thing into submission. We're gonna get it right. But let me show you how to do that. Okay, so for my Stetson Cross block, right, we're making this right here. But let me show you some of the components that go into it and what I'm gonna do in order to assure for perfection, right? Because that's what we're after here. No sloppy, baggy quilt tops. Ugh, God, that's just truly terrible. Anyhow, so let's say for this block, I'm gonna do just the upper corner. Okay, so I have this, and then this one goes like this next to it. This one actually needs to be squared up. Hold on. That one wasn't fully done yet. Not fully baked. All right, so I'm gonna put these two together, right? And so for this, it's not as important to pin this, although, you know, you might want to just to make sure it doesn't shift, because that's the other part that people aren't realizing, how much fabric shifts, right? And so you want to pin everything to make sure that while you're sewing it, it doesn't move, okay? So just two simple blocks, and on both sides, I know that they're perfect, right? So I'm not just picking it up and running it through the machine and hoping for the best. I mean, I really am like holding on to it, either with pins or whatever. Now, let me put this together, and then I'll show you how I attach the other, you know, blocks and things that when you have an intersection, right? You can actually put it next to each other, and when it locks into place, it goes click like this, where you're feeling it, right? And those two seam allowances, one's going this way, one's going that way, and they go click like that. At least in my head, they do. Would be another way, that would be another place you really want to pin. So let me put this together and keep showing you as we're working through this, the things you want to really pay attention to for your piecing work in order to get it precise and all your blocks the exact same shape and size. That's good. I always find this angle a little awkward, but do you see how I have my 1/4 inch seam allowance foot there? And it's not going to allow me to put fabric beyond this little black guard, right? So I'm going to feed this in here like this and pull the threads, get sewing. Okay, once it starts and it's close to the pin, I can pull the pin out, but I know now it's being held by the pin of the sewing machine and not by this anymore, right? The pin that I had in it. So I can remove that and watch this along here, right, on the side of the fabric as it's hitting up against this guard right here, not allowing me to do anything other than a 1/4 inch perfect seam allowance, okay? So I'm gonna do that and come back in through here. That's the other beautiful thing of it, is it kind of, you know, because the feed dogs pull it, then it kind of happens automatically and you don't have to hold it or guide it or any of that quite as much. Let me get those threads out of there, pull the pin out right before it hits it, and finish it up. Oh, come on. Here we go. All right, so that's done. Pull this out, trim up the threads. Right, perfect, 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 perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance, right? And the edges are precise. So, I'm up here. So I'm just gonna iron this open, but I know for a fact that this is done perfectly, okay? So then the next part is, right, perfect 1/4 seam, okay, English, perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance, right, on this, That's your first step. Now, pressing. And again, I suggest you review that tutorial that I did on that, just on that one item, because it's that important in order to get that right. So that as you're ironing this open, right, that you're really bumping the iron up against the upper fabric, right, to make sure that it really opens, right, both fabrics, and you're getting in as close to the thread as you can each and every time. All right, let's do that next. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to, I know I should be pressing in the dark, but on this one, because of the way that the block is, I'm doing it this way. Let me just straighten this out, this half square triangle. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so do you see? Oh, you don't see. Hold on 1 minute. Let's focus down on the work. All right, there we go. Okay, so for pressing, you really see how the iron bumps up against that top fabric, right? You really want to get in there and open it as much as you can with the sharp corner of your iron. And I suggest steam. So many people do this without any steam, and it just doesn't lay as flat. Okay, so now, first step, 1/4 inch seam allowance, perfect. Next step, ironing or pressing this open so that it's as flat as possible and that this is as open here as possible. So that's step number 2. And then step number 3, dun dun dun, pinning. Okay, let's look at that. I'll show you this twice on 2 different blocks. Okay, so see how this little guy, right, I have this piece with the seam allowance going that way, right? And then I have this piece that I'm going to be attaching to it with the seam allowance heading the other direction, right? So this one is heading that way, and then the other one on top of it is going the other direction. Now, when you put them together like this on top of each other, right, because the 2 different seam allowances are heading 2 different directions, that when you kind of hold them on top of each other and slide them back and forth, when they fall in next to each other, they make a little, like you can feel it, it goes click, like that, right? Because they're both like this, and then because they're opposite, they get in next to each other, like that, right? So check it out. Just go back and forth until you feel that happen, and when that happens and it falls into place, right? There it is. You can pin, or you need to pin that, okay? So that is perfect. I'm going to stick a pin right in by the intersection there. Okay, so it's holding it right here where it went click, and now I know that all of my dimensions should be perfect and lined up. Look at that. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do next on the sewing machine, and I'll show you that again just one more time, because you really have to get this right, and you really have to pin those intersections. One more time for intersections, right? So I have this seam allowance that's going this way, right? And this one that's going the opposite way. So when I run them over top of each other, when this one gets into its proper place, you can feel it, it snaps into place. And when you get that nice and tight like that, and it feels really good because it really feels locked into place, you have to pin it. Each and every intersection in your quilt. You can't just, you know, hope for the best and, oh, I measured it right, that should line up. Yeah, well, it's not going to. So you have to pin this, right, like that at the intersection with hopefully, you know, one seam going the one way and one the other way, so that when you line them up, they click into place. Okay, so that's pinned there. If I want to be really precise, I'll also line up the edges. Imagine that. Line up this edge, line up this edge, and that will make for even more precise sewing. Because look, I got a little bit of easing work that I got to do here. Why? Because this one is a little bit bigger. Now I may want to measure and see which one is in fact true for the measurement that I want, but I mean, all of this needs to be taken into consideration when pinning prior to taking it to the machine. Okay? So let me now sew this with the pins in place. Here we go. Another little free tip, parking pads. I know I've talked about this a little bit before, but I always have little scraps that are just left over, lying around, so that when I'm sewing multiple pieces, I just keep going, right? I never lift my foot and put it back down. I just keep sewing through. So then I'm going to lift this up and make sure, hello, that this gets started right on the right place. Put a needle down, remove the pin prior to hitting, if you want. Personal preference. I'm not here to judge, just help. All right. Oh, I actually sewed over that pin. The proper quilting Nazis are gonna get me. Okay, here we go. All right, easy enough. And again, I have that perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance foot on there so it doesn't allow me to, right? Because it's right here. See this little metal piece is not gonna allow me to go beyond 1/4 inch, and I can line it right there, and it kind of just actually guides it in. I'm gonna pull this pin out with the needle down prior to finishing my sewing. It's just that easy, woohoo! Right, then I take this piece over to the ironing board, and with a little steam, set the seams, all right? Get those perfect, and then open with a correct pressing technique, which knocks these two fabrics, right here with the sharp edge on the neighboring piece, right? Getting those seams as open as possible, and then really flattening it out, okay? So, with those couple of things, look how pretty this is, right? With those couple of things, you should have much better pieced work, okay? So it is perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance, number 1. Number 2, proper pinning, right, prior to sewing. And then after sewing, number 3 is pressing. Okay, so I hope that that's helpful, and this is really just the basics, but if you can incorporate those couple of things into your work, you'll have a better experience and a better product. Yay! Happy quilting, and as always, you know, I appreciate your support. It means the world to me and my family. Thanks so much. Bye.